What if you finally bought that rental property and then the market just tanks the very next day? Panic sets in. Your brain's like, I just bought at the top. I blew it. That fear is real. I've been there. And a lot of new investors are about to be there too, especially in this weird market where the prices are shaky, interest rates are high, and everyone and everything is whispering about a crash. But here's the truth. If your rental property can pass these three important checks, a crash doesn't destroy you. Matter of fact, it won't even matter. These three property checks I'm about to explain to you are your guardrails. They're your safety net. And if you've got all three of these in the bag, then a so-called crash will make not one iota of difference to you. So in today's video, I'm gonna break down the three things that you need to check before you buy a property in today's market. And I'm gonna give it to you step by step, using real examples from my own portfolio and give you practical frameworks that you can actually copy. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to make sure that your rental properties survive a market crash. Let's go. Let me paint a picture. You close on a rental property for $200,000. You're excited, you're proud, you're ready to rock and roll, and then a month later, Zillow says you just lost $15,000 of equity. Now your property's only worth $185,000. Your gut reaction is, oh, I'm screwed. I made the worst decision of my life. But the reality is, you don't lose a dollar unless you actually sell the property. As estimate's not your bank account. It's just a number on a screen, and it doesn't matter at all unless you actually sell your property. So it doesn't matter what it says online when the market gets ugly and homes go down in value. If your property still cash flows and people still want to rent it, you're doing just fine. The value will go back up. Just look at this chart. Here's a chart of housing prices over time. You can see that they go up and down, all the way up. As long as you're doing the right things, you have a property that cash flows and is appreciating, your value will go up over time. Real estate is a long game. Crashes come and go. But rents and appreciation, those three compounding wealth engines are always working in the background. So let's protect your property against a crash. Check one, you need to have a cash flow margin. This is the first guardrail. Why does this matter? Because rents breathe. They don't always stay at the exact same price. They may go up some and they may go down some, even annually, depending upon the time of year. Some years, your rents rise quickly. Other years, they might plateau or dip slightly. Or in some areas, your rental might get pressured by new builds or even job slowdowns in the area. If your deal only works when you're getting your maximum rent, you're really setting yourself up for a stressful property ownership. What I want is a margin. When I analyze a deal, I don't just analyze it with one rental number in mind. I look at a high and a low. I need a cash flow at the lowest possible rent too, not just the highest. I plug in the lowest possible rent, a rent that I know any time of the day it will rent for that, for sure. And then I stack all the expenses on top of that rent. I take out principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and all the variable expenses too. If it still cash flows with that haircut at the lowest possible rent, then I know that my property can survive any sort of market dip or rental softening, and I'll still be able to cash flow. Just picking the highest rent that you think you can get and basing all your numbers off of that is literally a recipe for disaster. Let's give an example. Let's say I think I can get a certain property to cash flow if the rent is $1,900 at the highest point, but I'm pretty confident I could get it to rent at $1,850. And then I know for sure I could rent it for $1,750. No problem, I'd get tenants for $1,750. Well, then $1,750 is my low end and $1,900 is my high end. That property still needs a cash flow at $1,750. If not, I'm not buying it. Now, the market itself will give you clues if you're willing to listen. If three similar homes are on the market and they've been on the market for rent for 30, 60, 90 days at $1,900, you're probably not gonna get $1,900 for your rental, even though you're seeing comparable properties for rent at $1,900. If they've been sitting, that's the market telling you that $1,900 is too high, and so you cannot bank on getting the $1,900. So you price your property in the middle or at the low end to guarantee that you can get someone inside and rent it. And don't overlook the power of some simple improvements that that can generate more income for your property. You don't have to drop a $30,000 to $50,000 remodel to get a cash flow boost. Small, durable upgrades go a really long way. Think things like upgrade your flooring to some nice quality LVP or refinish the hardwood floors. Paint the interior a light, cheerful color like white, any shade of white. Please don't go paint your walls dark gray or brown or do accent colors like blue. Do some nice clean landscaping. Mulch those flower beds and put in a few yellow flowers. Put in bright LED lighting, no dark yellow, old incandescent bulbs. You want the place to feel light, bright, clean, smell good, fresh. Simple, modern hardware, think matte black hardware. And if your market is responding well to your nice, clean, fresh, easy to do upgrades, you can go a step further if the market demands it to get your $1,900 by adding a washer and dryer, putting in a separate laundry room, adding a fence so that the tenants can have pets, remodeling the kitchen. Those are bigger upgrades that you can do down the line once you've already freshened up the inside with some easy to do and not super expensive upgrades. Now, if you're trying to prevent your property from going on the flip side, after a market crashes and you just bought it, what else can you do to prevent yourself from going in the red? Well, the second check is you need to have a 30-year mortgage, because who cares if the market crashes if you have a solid 30-year mortgage payment with fixed interest and your payment is staying the same every single month? You have a tenant inside, so who cares if the market dips and your property is $20,000 or $30,000 below what you paid for it? It does not matter unless you sell and realize the loss. So don't sell. There's no need to sell. You need to have 30-year fixed debt. That way you pay the same payment every month for 30 years. And at the end, you own it free and clear. No surprises. Let me give you two scenarios so you can actually understand what I'm talking about with this. Because a 30-year fixed debt really is so powerful. Let's say you buy a $200,000 property and you put 20% down. That means you have a loan for about $160K. At a 7% interest rate, you've got about a $1,064 a month payment in principal and interest. Now take that same property and let's put 25% down instead of 20. Your loan now drops to $150,000 and your payment goes down to $997 a month. That's a $70 difference every single month for 30 years. Now, you don't have to pick the higher down payment if that doesn't fit your strategy, but it is definitely an option. Now, maybe you had to take an adjustable loan or you had to do a DSCR loan so you could actually buy the property. That's fine too, but this is what you do. This check is an easy one, and the goal is simple. Fixed rate debt gives you fixed costs. So you're not scrambling in 5 years or 10 years with an adjustable rate mortgage. And if the market crashes, you're not scrambling to figure out how you can pay back the bank or how you can refinance because your property's not worth the original amount that you paid for. 30-year fixed debt is the best type of debt you can do. Now, the third check, and this is my favorite one, the neighborhood. You need to be in a strong, desirable neighborhood. If you bought a property and the market crashes the next day, you still own the property, it doesn't matter if you have 30-year fixed debt, and it doesn't matter if you bought at the top or feel like you overpaid for the property, and it doesn't matter if people still want to rent it. Crash or no crash, people still move for jobs, divorces, deaths, new opportunities, and just because they're plain old sick of living where they are and finally have to move up and move out. But when times get shaky, and the market is down, sometimes renters can be picky if there is an abundance of properties to choose from. That's why it's important to have a nice property in a quality neighborhood, because tenants and buyers even are always going to choose clean, safe, and desirable over nasty, crime-ridden, and undesirable properties any day of the week. So what I'm looking for are areas where properties are getting filled, their vacancies are getting filled within 2 to 4 weeks of them being listed on the market for rent. And I want to see the beginning asking rent and what it ended up renting for fairly close together. I don't want to see properties sitting on the market for a long time with major rent drops. I also want my property within a 30-minute driving distance to major employment centers. If I bought a property in the boonies out in BFE in the middle of nowhere because it was a nice brand new property, People aren't really going to want to drive the distance if there is something that's just as nice, closer to all the things, and is cheaper. I also want to be in a neighborhood that has quality schools and low crime. You think these things are a given, and you might be wondering, why am I even talking about these? But you will be surprised the number of investors who seek out properties for cash flow alone and disregard these two important factors, which are crime and schools. So if you want your property to survive a market crash and still be in demand and not have to worry if your value dropped, you need to make sure that your third check is in play, which means you bought in a quality neighborhood. When it comes to school stability, you really want to be in that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 school rating. Really, in my experience, over coaching people on buying their first rental property over the past 5 years and being in the real estate industry for 18 years, I can pretty much tell you that any school rating, elementary school rating with a 1 or 2 in the great schools rating is gonna be in the not the best neighborhood. We're talking more crime. We're talking more of a D-class neighborhood. We're talking rents very low, low income, areas that you probably don't feel safe going to. And then there's the street feel. You want to make sure that in these neighborhoods you're considering that the roofs are okay, the lawns are cut. You don't see tarps on the roofs or people parking 3 cars on the grass. You don't want to see tires piled up on the side of the house. You don't want to see huge box trucks in people's driveways. And you don't want to see a bunch of for rent signs on people's lawns. Now, there are 2 little red flags that can cause some pain in your butt later on. One of them is property taxes. Because in some areas, property taxes will reset to the higher appraised rate after you buy the property. And if you aren't checking to make sure that the property taxes are correct for you, you might be in for a big surprise, because some counties, some areas, and some parts of the country charge a higher property tax rate for investors than owner occupants. The other little red flag that can kind of cause some pain in your butt is when crime is trending up. And I don't mean just in the city with a Google search, what's the crime in Memphis? But I mean the exact block that your property is sitting on. Now, if you pick the right neighborhood, then a market crash doesn't matter 1 iota. I look for B-class neighborhoods. And when you do that, you help insulate yourself from that vacancy potential, even in downturns. If you don't know what a B-class neighborhood is, or really how to actually identify one with certainty, you need to check out my video, A, B, C, D class areas explained. I'll put a link down there for you below. Now, when you put all these 3 checks together, you start to see the full picture and how you can still buy properties and make it work even during a market crash. First one, you've got some income cushion from your cash flow margin, your rental margin. Just in case rents dip, you're still covered and you're still positive. 2, you've got fixed expenses locked in with a 30-year mortgage. So doesn't matter if there's a market crash, your loan is being left alone. And 3, you've got strong demand for rentals in your neighborhood, so it's always going to stay rented. When you stack those 3 checks together, it won't matter if there's a market crash. Your tenant will just quietly be paying down the rent and paying the expenses. And that amortization with equity is real in every market. Let me make this concrete with an example of one of my own properties in my portfolio. I bought a rental for about $200,000 recently, and the interest rate about 7%. The rent, $1,800. It covered everything: principal, interest, taxes, insurance, variable expenses, fixed expenses, you name it, it covers it, and I cash flow. Now, if a chart online, Zillow's estimate says my property is now worth $170 tomorrow, I don't really care. Nothing changes in my plan. The rent still comes in, mortgage still getting paid. Only way I lose is if a headline gets me thinking that I have to sell my property and then I actually sell for a loss. But there would be no legitimate reason why I would sell a cash flowing property where my expenses stay the same and my rent is covering everything. That's why these 3 checks matter. They keep you in control, even when the market is scary. There is another piece here that matters, and I don't want to gloss over it, and that is tenant quality. None of this is going to work in a market downturn if you don't have quality tenants. In downturns, when people might not be renting as much, the gap really widens, and there might not be as many tenants to choose from. You don't want to feel forced to just take in any warm body that applies. because you could be accidentally putting in a really bad tenant that's going to cost you a lot of money. When you screen well and make your property the easy yes, you attract tenants that are quality and tenants who want to stay. In my portfolio, tenants average 4 to 7 years in my properties. That wipes out the stress of having a vacant property and even makes slow markets kind of irrelevant. Now, let's say you've got a deal right now, and that's why you're watching this video, and your property doesn't pass these 3 checks. Don't panic. I have a plan for you. If your property is sitting on the market vacant and it isn't renting, you'll need to reprice your property. But before you do that, I recommend taking new quality photos, maybe even paying a professional to take photos. If there's also anything you can do to increase the ROI of your property, to increase the value of your property, do it. If that means adding some can lights in the living room, painting the interior, giving your kitchen cabinets a facelift, you're going to need to do that to make it to the top of people's list if they have a plethora of rentals to choose from. Now, if you've got a variable interest rate loan, or you have a 5-1 loan, or you have a 10-1 loan, I encourage you to refinance to a 30-year fixed mortgage as soon as you qualify and can do that. One thing that I, on accident, did early on in my investing career was I started a lease agreement in the winter. I had bought a property, fixed it up, and had it on the market in November. Oh, that's the worst time of year to rent a property. It sat vacant until February, until I finally got a renter. Did I rent the property for 1 year and had the lease end in February? No. What you need to do in that instance, if you have a winter vacancy, is make the lease end somewhere in the spring and summertime. It is okay to do a 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-month lease. It is okay to do that, and you don't have to just stick to 12 months. So get yourself out of the winter when your property is vacant and have that lease end in the spring or early summer. So here's your takeaway from this video. Buy rentals that still cash flow, even at your lowest possible rent. Finance them with a 30-year fixed mortgage. And then only buy properties in good quality neighborhoods where good quality tenants are going to want to live. If you do that, a crash becomes not your problem. Tenants keep paying the mortgage, your loan balance keeps shrinking, and you quietly are building wealth, just like a little engine, while all the headlines scream crash. It just doesn't matter. Now, if you want the full process, from neighborhood selection to deal pressure tests, all the way to team building, I teach it all in my Cake Method Masterclass. It's the exact system that I use to build a 7-figure portfolio with just a handful of long-term rentals. And it's what I now teach first-time investors who want real results without all the drama and headaches. And if you're still worried about messing up and buying a property during a market crash and losing your bud and not cash flowing, watch this video next. It's 5 reasons why long-term rental properties fail. I'll show you the exact mistakes that new investors make and how you can avoid them. I'll link it on screen and down below. If you got value from today's video, please do all the things: like, comment down below, say hi, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to ring the bell. That way you can be notified of when I put super amazing, awesome, spectacular videos just like this out every single week on how to be successful with long-term rental properties. And until next time, keep building your wealth brick by brick.